So now that we are solidly in Uranus in Gemini vibes, I'm noticing this explosion of AI, which absolutely makes sense because it's new, radical ways of sharing information, right? Right. And I'm noticing how it's getting rolled out on different platforms. Most interestingly enough, I'm noticing how it's getting rolled out on YouTube under the guise of the protection of children, and it made me real curious about what is going on with YouTube. Astrologically speaking, let's talk about it. Oh, hey, cosmic cuties. It is your friendo, the lady Ms. Vagina Jenkins, black, queer, autistic artist and astrologer. And that's right, in this week's video, we're going to be talking about YouTube, astrologically speaking. Before we get into that, some quick housekeeping. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. Please make sure that you subscribe and turn on that notification bell. If you've been here and you're already subscribed, have you considered becoming a member of this channel? Membership in this channel starts at $3.99 a month, and you get really cool perks like custom emojis and loyalty badges. You also get to see content before it's published to the wider public, and the best perk of all, you get to support your favorite black, queer, autistic astrologer. And you know what? Shout out to the current members of the Cosmic QT Ballers Club, which is what I call my subscribers. I absolutely appreciate your support. And please let me know how I can be in reciprocal support of you with my astrology skills and knowledge. All right, that's all the housekeeping parts. Let's get into this astrology. So, because of YouTube's recent push to identify underage users using AI. Ostensibly, that's what's happening, right? On the surface, that's the meta message we've been told. But many users, myself included, are really worried about what this means for internet privacy and protected speech. Yeah, it seems as if we are sliding towards a future where you can no longer be anonymous on the internet. And if you can't be anonymous on the internet, then what even did our Gen X foremothers and fathers die for? Anyway, they began the rollout of their AI age identifying software last Wednesday. And I expected to see a lot of pushback about it because what will happen is AI will say, oh, hey, this user seems as if they're under age 18. We need them to verify their age with a driver's license, a credit card, or a selfie showing your dentition. It just feels so very Big Brother 1984 vibes. I expected to see a lot more pushback, but it seems as if either people aren't aware or don't care. I personally am just keeping an eye on it. I'm doing what I do, and I'm keeping an eye on it, which I think is what most people in my country are doing as we face the very, very real reality that fascism is here and dictatorship is not too far behind. Anywho, let's just look at the astrology of YouTube before I spiral into despair. Okay, so this is the chart for YouTube. Using the date of February 14th, 2005. The reason why I want to talk about that date for a second. And the reason why I want to talk about that date is because of the philosophical question of when does a business begin? When is a business born? Is a business born when the person or partners ideate it? When it has a name? When you file the paperwork or when this website went live? Or is it some other thing, like when you get your first client or your first customer, or in the case of YouTube, its first video was uploaded to the website in April of
2005, some, what, 2 months later. And so, yeah, I just want to throw that out there because, yes, this could potentially be the chart for YouTube if we consider when the website was created as the beginning or the birth of YouTube. Some other people might argue that it's when the first video gets uploaded. That's a completely different chart. Some other people might argue, oh, it's when the founders filed for the copyright or whatever. Um, and all of those charts are going to be different and they're going to have different interpretations. So this is a chart. This is a chart interpretation based on the chart of February 14th, 2005. That's a long way of saying take this with a grain of salt. Other astrologers might be using other charts. This is the one I want to use. So yeah, the first thing that jumps out at me or that I look at in any chart is the rising sign. I know that, some folks might look at the big three, but I kind of just want to like take things discreetly, even as I am holding the holistic big picture. And I'm really good at holding both of those things at the same time. I know it's quite a skill. But yeah, so Libra rising, interesting, perfect for business. Libra is the sign associated with business. For example, the scales, these are not the scales of justice, as everybody often talks about, because Libra is so balanced. This is actually the scales that are used in the marketplace. And I've always thought it's interesting that Libra is an air sign ruled by Venus, and it very much has that vibe. It's all about beautiful communication, being diplomatic, being charming, talking to me nice kind of energy. And as that applies to YouTube, I think it manifests as those really, really stringent community guidelines. YouTube is strict. YouTube is strict over here. I think YouTube is definitely the most strict in terms of its community guidelines. It's very like, y'all sit down in the back of the car and be nice to each other kind of energy, which is interesting when you think about YouTube's midheaven and 10th house in Cancer, that kind of same mommy energy. Y'all sit down and be nice to each other. Yeah, it's giving that. But yeah, we've got a Libra rising. So, yes, to any sort of communications, but it seems like YouTube is rooted in communications that are more about um, finding community, connecting to community in positive ways. And yeah, finding some of that sense of connection that we can have with each other when we are sharing ideas. It's that way of like finding community through shared belief systems, ideas, that kind of intellectual community building kind of vibe with a Libra rising. And then because it's a Libra rising, I definitely want to know where the planet Venus is because Venus is the ruler for Libra. And so that makes Venus this chart's chart ruler, the planet that has mm, a lot of influence. I don't know if it's the most influence, but a lot of influence. And we find that Venus sitting here in the fifth house. So, how much of YouTube's who it is and what it's meant to embody in terms of its mission is rooted in Venusian energy, fifth house energy, Aquarian energy. So let's break that down. So when I think about Venus, I think about the values associated with a person. Venus can also, as it relates to individual people, we can talk about like romantic relationships, sex life, stuff like that. But as it relates to this business, I'm thinking about values primarily. And with a Venus sitting in Aquarius, I wonder about values around rolling out new technology, values around connecting people via ideas. It's also an air sign. Um, I also think about the ways in which Aquarian energy has this kind of humanitarian nature to it, and I wonder, no, that's not true. I was going to say, I wonder about the founders and how they thought that this platform might connect people. And I know how they thought that this platform might would connect people. They initially thought that it would be a dating website. that just has a really, really good video uploading uh, platform or element to it. And it was right around the time that they, started the website that they realized, actually, let's cut out the dating part of it and just have people upload videos. So it's interesting, again, that Venusian connection, but how that gets expressed in an Aquarian way is, yes, not so much the interest in romance, but how about humanity as a whole? Not finding a lover, but expressing my love for community. So yeah, that's an interesting kind of way of being. Shout out to all my Venus Aquarius folks. And then in the fifth house, how is it tailored? How is YouTube tailored to people who are looking for a form of self-expression or looking for a hobby or are looking for some way to just experience joy through this particular medium? I'll also say that it's interesting to note this Jupiter in the first house. So, Jupiter sitting at any of the angles is going to have a really strong influence on the overall chart. Jupiter specifically, so close to the AC, the rising, it gives that kind of I am expanding myself across the globe kind of feel. And so, is this about YouTube being a cross cultural international phenomenon, perhaps? Um, with it being Jupiter in retrograde, I'm wondering about the sort of a unique approach or an unconventional approach to spreading one's lore across the world. So is this about the fact that YouTube uses like online social media to spread its business across the world instead of like actual physical brick and mortar locations? Is this about like the Aquarian nature of it all, like using the internet, social media to make sure that your business is internationally known? And speaking of the Aquarian energy, this little Aquarian stellium is quite interesting to me because if we're talking about Venus, Mercury, Sun, and Neptune being connected, what is that story? It's that story. So Venus, we're talking about values. Mercury, we're talking about communication style and the things that you like to talk and think about. Sun, where you're headed, what you aspire to. So when I think about all of those planets telling a story together, let's start with the Venus of it all. So YouTube's values being rooted somehow in mercurial ideals, connecting to ideas, doing research, talking it out, telling stories, that kind of energy. Values that are rooted in communications, storytelling, aspiring to these Aquarian ideals, like how do we improve humanity as a whole using these values around communication. And then the Neptune part, like, how does this connect us, like, on a metaphysical level to each other? Best case scenario. Or does YouTube feel like it has to engage in duplicitous business practices? Um, And the reason why I say that is because when I think about Neptune in a business's chart, I'm wondering what stories are you telling and how true are these stories? And who are you telling them to? Your shareholders or the public at large? And the last thing I'll say about the chart is how interesting it is that that stellium is directly square the Taurus moon. I'm looking at any chart that is not a person. I'm thinking about the moon as a representative of the people or maybe public sentiment about this particular event or business. And the moon loves being in Taurus. It's quite comfortable in Taurus. Like literally, the moon's job is to get us to a place of emotional comfort. And Taurus is all about the physical realm being comfortable so we can get to emotional safety. And with a moon in Taurus for YouTube's business chart, I very much wonder about the experience of people feeling as if, yes, YouTube is positive for my life, mental health, self esteem. It is serving me positively. But how that particular moon Taurus energy is squaring all of what YouTube is about. And I wonder about the experience of being a YouTube shareholder or board member or CEO or whatever, and what it's like to hold the tension of keeping the YouTube user base and YouTube users and consumers happy. Actually, come to think about it, if the moon represents like the public or public sentiment about a business, is that actually the user base and the consumers of YouTube that are happy with YouTube? Or is this, in fact, the experience of YouTube's clients feeling happy with YouTube? And the reason why I say that is because I'm just realizing this is playing out in the eighth house, which is the house of other people's money, clients, shared resources, that kind of thing. So, yeah, is this more about keeping clients happy? And then who are YouTube's clients? I think it's mainly the advertisers. I'd be curious who else. Oh, now they're rolling out this AI stuff. So is Palantir one of their clients? I don't know. Back. And the last thing I want to touch on before we close this out is the transits of it all. What is happening in the sky right now against this particular chart? And the big thing that pops to mind is the fact of Saturn and Neptune sitting in Aries, which means YouTube is soon to be experiencing a Saturnian square. So a Saturnian square is placed in the Saturn cycle where we are met with some sort of crisis that calls us to take action that sort of pushes us to the next level of our evolution, right? This is playing out in YouTube's seventh house of other people. First house is the self, seventh house is the other, right? This is where I think that the YouTube user base and consumer base definitely lives. Um, and so if we're talking about transits of Saturn and Neptune to YouTube's seventh house, Neptune transiting this chart's seventh house, I wonder very much about delusions of the other, both pulling the wool over others' eyes or other folks pulling the wool over your eyes. YouTube is a huge corporate entity, so I don't know that it would be the people trying to get over on YouTube, but there's just usually something with Neptune where in the first like 10 degrees, the first decan of Neptune experience is usually some sort of hiding of the truth that then is revealed in the second decan of Neptune. And we're still sitting around, I think, 0 or 1 degrees of Aries right now. So I don't think that this will become immediately apparent, but because we are sitting in the early degrees of Aries or Neptune in Aries, and this AI rollout just happened, I very much wonder if it has to do with this. The excuse that the AI rollout is founded upon is very much on protect the children, but I think like FOSTA, SESTA, sex workers will tell you so much about this history. They often will put children at the forefront of legislation that is duplicitous and harmful to adult everyday citizens. Um, and they count on you just going, oh, well, if it's for the kids, I won't meet too closely. And so I wonder how this AI rollout honestly will go. They're saying it's for the kids and for their safety, but what is it really for? And when will that be made clear to us? That's what I will say. And then there's also the Saturn conjunction of it all. It seems to be like I thought Saturn in Aries was all going to be about like finding individual agency and self authority. And it might still be about that for individuals, but it seems that on a corporate, governmental, mundane astrology level, that Saturn in Aries is about bullies, and I don't like it. Saturn can be a lot about like governmental bodies or like strict traditional societal norms, leadership, stuff like that. And what it seems to be, the Saturn and those kinds of institutions to be about empowering themselves and finding their authority, which no one asked for. No one asked for that. But yeah, as it pertains to the YouTube chart and how that transit might play out in the seventh house, I wonder a lot, like I said, about this AI rollout and how that will look in terms of YouTube pretending that it has the authority over users and consumers and gets to have access to our private information, our IDs. And yeah, it's a lot going on. As you can tell, I'm incredibly frustrated and concerned about it all. And I'll just, like I said, be keeping my eyes open. But yeah, so those are some of the things that I noticed in the chart. The Libra rising, the finding the Venus in this Aquarius stellium, um, the square to the moon, and also the transiting Saturn square that is happening between this chart's natal Saturn in Cancer and Saturn in Aries in the sky. What did you notice in this chart? Tell me. Tell me. Tell me in the comments below.
All right, y'all. So that's my quick sort of cursory noticings of this chart. If you are also thinking about and interested in astrology, what do you notice about this chart? What did I miss? What do you have an alternative perspective on? Sound off in the comments because I want to hear from you. And I also want to learn from you because I'm open and curious and desirous of community conversations. Let me say that. Yes. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching this video, for supporting this channel, and of course, for making time for queer astrology. Bye.